We are the stars which sing. We sing with our light. We are the birds of fire. We fly over the sky. Our light is a voice. We make a road for the spirit to pass over. For the spirit to pass over. We are like the wind, wrapped in luminous wings. We make a road for the spirit to pass over, for the spirit to pass over.
L'ho osservato per anni. Si affacciava alla finestra e guardava fuori, per un tempo indecifrabile, infinito. O forse era infinito solo per me. Cercavo di capire cosa stesse guardando, cosa fosse in grado di attirare la sua attenzione. Nulla, non c'era nulla. Eppure restava lì, in cerca di qualcosa, come se ciò che lo circondava non fosse mai abbastanza. Anche oggi ti osservo, mentre questo treno ci riporta là, da dove sei arrivato. Sei sempre di profilo, non guardi mai avanti. Come se voltandoti volessi riprenderti tutto ciò che hai lasciato indietro. Come se volessi riassaporare ogni singolo momento della tua vita, per essere certo di non dimenticarlo e portarlo sempre con te. La tua testa è leggermente inclinata, appoggiata al finestrino, lo sguardo oltre il vetro, intento a non perdere nemmeno un secondo del paesaggio che scorre lento davanti a noi. Sento di invidiarti un po' durante questo viaggio di ritorno. Tu torni a casa, io invece dove sto andando? Da bambina viaggiavo spesso con lui. Amava prendere i notturni. Diceva che su quei treni c'era la vita, o forse la vita era lui stesso. Gironzolava per i vagoni, restava sveglio tutta la notte, fumacchiava con i suoi coetanei, chiacchierava di cose a me sconosciute. Parlava di viaggi, di quella volta che ha raggiunto il Nord Europa in autostop. Non stavamo mai al nostro posto, io lo seguivo sempre. Un giorno sarò come lui, pensavo. Avevo fretta di crescere e di viaggiare da sola con uno zaino tutto mio. E così ho fatto. Ogni volta che mi rimettevo in viaggio, mi accompagnava all'aeroporto, in stazione, e una parte di lui partiva con me. Spesse volte mi sono chiesta se rimpiangesse la sua vita girovaga. Un giorno gli ho chiesto: papà, perché hai messo su famiglia? Noi ti abbiamo impedito di continuare a viaggiare. Ha abbozzato un sorriso e ha scosso la testa. Poi ha detto che non era vero, che lui aveva continuato a viaggiare, ma con la mente. Sembrava avesse quella risposta pronta da anni. Allora ho capito. Era sempre stato presente, ma non era mai stato veramente lì, con noi. Chissà quante navi sono salpate con lui a bordo, su quanti treni è salito, quanti chilometri ha macinato, mentre esplorava il mondo dalla sua finestra, con una tazzina di caffè fumante in mano. Chi sei, papà? Cosa vedi fuori da questo finestrino? Forse quello che vedi tu è ciò che sto cercando io.
Sono cresciuto nel quartiere Vicaria, in un appartamento condiviso da 5 famiglie. Le porte erano sempre aperte. I rumori non mi facevano mai sentire solo. Sin da piccolo sentivo il bisogno di allontanarmi da tutto, conoscere persone nuove. Un desiderio che forse era troppo intenso per la mia età. Non era ribellione. Era voglia di non restare mai fermo. Ricordo che proprio per questo mio padre mi diceva sempre: «Guagliò, ma tu hai che pigliato? Tu vedi un mondo tutto al contrario». Per capire Napoli è sufficiente osservare i volti di coloro che la abitano. In ogni sguardo c'è un pezzo di vita vissuta, che i napoletani indossano come se fosse un abito logoro, del quale però non vogliono fare a meno. Camminando per le strade si ha l'impressione di avventurarsi in un presepe vivente, dove ogni ruga e ogni espressione dei personaggi rappresenta una storia da raccontare. Anche per questo il quartiere Vicaria era un concentrato di vita, lo schiamazzo delle donne che ordinavano il pane a Don Egidio il bottegaio, i venditori di pesce che riaprivano i loro banchi, lo scarparo che batteva i chiodi con la determinazione di chi sa che dovrà riparare molte scarpe per far studiare i suoi figli. A me piaceva frequentare Napoleone, un ragazzino più grande di me. Napoleone mi portava per le strade di Napoli e mi raccontava storie. Lui non mi portava sulla cattiva strada, ma per la strada. Passeggiavamo per ore. Nella testa avevamo tanti sogni e nelle tasche 2 taralli che Napoleone prendeva dal banco del mercato di suo papà. Non facevamo mai la stessa strada, volevamo perderci. Anche oggi sento quel desiderio di non stancarmi mai di meravigliarmi. E questo lo deve a un ragazzino che per molti era solo uno scugnizzo. A volte Napoleone mi chiedeva di accompagnarlo alla stazione. Amava ascoltare il fischio dei treni in partenza e guardarli allontanarsi fino a quando non sparivano oltre l'orizzonte dei suoi grandi occhi trasognanti. Ci fermavamo a osservare i gruppi di coloro che attendevano il treno per il nord o per la Germania. Caricavano grandi valigie sui convogli diretti verso luoghi che avevano solo sentito nominare. Qualcuno prima di salire, accorgendosi della nostra presenza, ci toccava la testa spettinandoci i capelli. Una sorta di rituale, un ultimo contatto con la sua città, prima di avventurarsi verso l'ignoto. Mi torna spesso in mente quell'immagine, soprattutto oggi. I migranti non viaggiano più sui treni e con le valigie di cartone, ma su imbarcazioni di fortuna. Certe volte quando cammino per strada noto che molti dei nuovi migranti mi salutano, anche se non mi conoscono, e ho netta l'impressione che sappiano che sono uno di loro. Quasi come se un viandante potesse distinto leggere nell'anima degli altri viandanti.
To give them an update that we have. I told Tango to let them know.
No, them first. He doesn't have life jackets. Okay, come on board. Come. Come on board. Come here.
ultimi 100 anni circa 30 milioni di italiani sono andati all'estero a cercare un lavoro. Attualmente i lavoratori emigrati temporaneamente all'estero sono circa 6 milioni.
Io ormai ho girato 3 nazioni, sono 20 anni in giro. Noi siamo i loro servi, siamo i negri d'Europa.
Essere italiano vuol dire essere povero, ignorante, essere l'ultimo nella scala sociale. Allora bisogna americanizzarsi, canadesizzarsi in fretta per crearsi una certa sicurezza psicologica.
Così, seppelliti i morti, per nessuno la festa della vittoria fu breve come per il Sud. Ricominciava l'emigrazione. Ricordiamo, o brigante o emigrante.
C'è una cosa che mi sono sempre chiesto. Perché le persone che emigrano fanno di tutto per nascondere le loro origini? Tentano persino di parlare il dialetto del posto, come se volessero dimenticare la loro provenienza e mostrarsi migliori agli occhi della loro nuova città. Quasi come se la parola migrante fosse sinonimo di inefficienza o inciviltà. A quel tempo nel quartiere viveva Nanninella, una signora che vendeva generi alimentari in sovrapprezzo. Ci si rivolgeva a lei quando il bottegaio smetteva di fare credito. Da Nanninella non si facevano grandi spese. Si compravano 100 grammi di pasta, un misurino d'olio, 50 grammi di caffè per riempire la macchinetta e iniziare la giornata. Mia nonna mi mandava da lei e io me ne stavo in fila con le altre persone. Ogni volta che un cliente se ne andava, lei chiudeva la porta, annotava il debito e dopo un po' la riapriva. Un gesto solenne che non faceva che sottolineare la differenza tra lei e gli altri, quelli che avevano bisogno. Osservavo i loro volti, avvertivo un senso di ingiustizia indescrivibile. Sapevo che il muro che separava quella gente dal resto del mondo non si sarebbe mai infranto. Eppure non riuscivo a condannarla. Come avrebbe potuto sfamarsi tutta quella gente se non ci fosse stata lei? Ancora oggi non ho una risposta. A volte mia mamma mi affidava a Don Mario, un signore che ospitava i bambini del quartiere, in quella che all'epoca si chiamava la scuola di intrattenimento. Quando le mamme non sapevano dove lasciare per qualche ora i loro figli, chiedevano aiuto a lui. Ogni giorno una cinquantina di ragazzini correvano su e giù per casa sua. Lui non chiedeva nulla in cambio, lo si ripagava come si poteva, con un pacco di pasta o di caffè. Questa era la Napoli che mi piaceva, poi tutto cambiò. Mio padre ottenne un lavoro e un alloggio e così lasciammo il quartiere Vicaria. Ricordo bene quel giorno, perché fu l'ultima volta che io vidi mia madre sorridere. Mia madre, che aveva sempre parlato il dialetto napoletano, si accorse in questo nuovo quartiere che esisteva la lingua italiana. Iniziò a rinchiudersi, incapace di reggere il peso del giudizio, limitandosi ad osservare il mondo di nascosto. E fu proprio in questi grandi palazzi che per la prima volta la mia libertà si scontrò con il pregiudizio. La mia vivacità e la mia curiosità non erano più viste con simpatia dagli abitanti del nuovo quartiere. Nel rione scoprì che i bambini non sapevano nulla del modo di vivere della mia Napoli. Io ho conosciuto impiegati, dirigenti, persone che non avevo mai visto prima. Da quel momento cominciai a non sopportare le disuguaglianze. Perché se è vero che prima la mia famiglia non aveva nulla, è anche vero che ciò la accomunava agli altri abitanti del quartiere Vicaria. Se non sai di essere diverso, se non sai di avere meno degli altri, non ti accorgi della differenza. Nella nuova casa avevamo una stanza degli ospiti, ma non ricevevamo mai nessuno. È strano, eppure al migliorare delle condizioni di vita, i miei familiari hanno chiuso quelle porte, che prima erano sempre aperte a tutti. Iniziai a temere che questa fosse una metafora universale e che una società opulenta non fosse la strada giusta per favorire la condivisione, bensì un modo per alimentare la paura degli altri, di ciò che non si conosce. Poi a 18 anni ho comprato un sacco a pelo e così sono iniziate le mie avventure. Durante uno di questi viaggi ho conosciuto la donna che sarebbe diventata mia moglie. Continuavo a ripetermi che mi sarei fermato per poco e invece sono trascorsi 38 anni. Napoleone mi ha insegnato ad apprezzare la libertà e io ho continuato a inseguirla a modo mio. Diventato adulto, la mia voglia di non restare fermo si è trasformata nella scelta di non intraprendere nessuna azione che potesse limitare le mie scelte. Negli anni ho capito cosa voleva dire mio padre quando diceva che vedevo il mondo al contrario. Ciò che non sapevo però era che questo modo di vedere la vita mi avrebbe fatto scoprire il significato della solitudine. In un mondo dove tutti vogliono essere qualcuno, mi sono concesso il lusso di non essere nessuno. Ho deciso di non partecipare a nessuna corsa. A me non è mai piaciuto arrivare, ma partire. Quando ho l'impressione che tutto scorra troppo velocemente, mi fermo e ripenso alla mia Napoli, quella che ho vissuto con Napoleone. Perché per quanto lontano possiamo andare, torniamo sempre là, dove tutto è iniziato.
Her name is Carol. She's a pretty awesome woman. She passed away from brain cancer when I was 6. She was 44. And she always said, "You're stronger where you're broken." That's something I've carried with me my whole life, and since losing her. I got into the studio probably about 3 months after my son died, and I sat down drawing from memory of his body. The act of grieving is really an exhausting and full-time endeavor in which time seems to bend, and it's really hard to get a grasp on where one is in the world.
I'm surprised every day that he's not here. We were married almost 59 years. It's a long time. But we only knew each other a couple of months before we got married. It's called lucky. We miss him.
Mom, you wanted a girl, and 3 boys later you got me. I know how excited you were to raise a daughter. I'm sorry that you couldn't be there to watch me grow up. I wish you could hear me talk in Spanish or see my paintings. I wish you were there for the first time I got my heart broken. I'm sure so many decisions would have been made different if you were here. And I know there were countless times I needed your opinion. I still do. I don't trust the memories I have of you. I don't know how I could ever fully understand or know you. As time goes on, I grow farther from a time where I knew you, a time before you were sick. I was dealing with a lot of unprocessed grief going into my freshman year of college, and built up years of, not ignoring it, because we addressed it, we talked about it as a family, and, I had years of healing behind me at this point, but there was still a lot of things I hadn't dealt with and faced head on, and continuing to practice and build on my practice, which I think is so important with art. it's necessary. It's so healing to make something and from start to finish, see the process and to create it. I think that has really, helped me learn to process grief in a certain way.
What are your children's names? Well, I know I do remember your daughters.
Yes, Natalie.
I know no other life than the one without you. So in some ways it has been easy to live without you. The thought of who I would be if you were alive is terrifying because I know my life would be fundamentally different. I feel like the connection we had grows weaker over time. I lose more of you every day to the idea of who you were. I wish I had something from you to me. I think that's why I'm writing this now. There are so many situations in life we have no control over, and I feel strength from accepting that I'm powerless. I'm painting the thing that killed you because I know I'm capable of understanding how you died. I photographed your tumor and I talked with your doctors. I can rationalize how you died and understand what my life has become after the fact, but I will never be able to understand why things are this way. Art helps me accept the things I can't change and give meaning to the things I don't understand. Art has given me a way to make sense of my own reality. I don't know where you went, so I make work about space and place to understand where I am, where you used to be. I miss you, but sometimes I worry that I'm just missing the idea of you. Knowing that I'll never be able to have this conversation with you makes writing this difficult. But the process is worthwhile.
Into the world. His birth. His sister sitting in the tub with me as I labored. Ecstatic sense of birth I didn't think was possible. Drug-free and vaginal. Had the cutest chin. His sister was so proud of him. Every day she held him, went on adventures. Pumping is something done by so many working nursing mothers to get their children the nourishment they need. So between clients, pumping on that day, that's what I did. I waited. And as I came out of the grocery store, my phone began to rattle. Missed call, missed call, missed call, and the message finally came through. My son wasn't breathing, he was taken to the hospital. The EMTs came and they had taken him, but which hospital had he gone to? They didn't know. We found out which hospital, and I got there. And because it's Los Angeles, I threw my keys to the hospital valet, and a woman ran out and she said, "Oh, are you Mom?" And I said yes, and I followed her into the ER. And we got to the curtains behind which they were holding his body. And the doctor looked up at me in the sea of doctors and my son lying there on the table, and he looked at the woman standing next to me and this poor intern. He said, "What does she know? Talk to her." And she sat me down and she looked in my eyes, and I had two questions for her. Is he breathing? No. Is he gone? So I walked into the room where they held his body, and I began the daunting task of what every mother who's confronted with a child's body in the ER has to do. And I began preparing his body for his sister to see him for one last time. I removed the onesie that had been cut by the paramedics who tried in vain to revive him, taking all my baby's ephemera and putting it into a memory box one by one. We began the long road of figuring out what life meant after his death.
It's beyond sort of a cathartic experience. The work makes space for that with my friends and with strangers whom I've never met. I can look through the piece called Dead Baby Club, through the memory box, and as a viewer experience what it's like to untie, to open, and to see one image after the other created by women who've survived the death of a child. It said that I had gained the iconoclastic nickname of President of Dead Baby Club. And that's not the way we typically talk about surviving the death of a child. I don't want to knock these other methods of grieving, but you also have to know yourself well enough to know what's going to work for you and what isn't. And for me, to confront my son's death head on, that's a practice in grief that I can live with. I say Dead Baby Club, I'm combating the euphemisms of death.
Mourning, devastated, day by day. How do you mourn one who is still here? Strangers ask, and how are you? This illness is not about flying solo. Life's roller coaster is magnified. A hello can reverberate and shock. There is no set behavior. My bedtime comes. My hope is to rest. Then the rules change. Don't go too deep into sleep. Listen for the adventurer, the one who manages to escape the safety of the bed. Trouble is always moments away. Am I ready? I don't think I could have gotten through this without having something meaningful to do. I found other friends whose husband had Alzheimer's too, and the ones who were stay-at-home but had no vocation, or, I mean, this is not my vocation, this is my life, making art. I didn't really think I had anything. I thought it was just getting my mind off the seriousness of Jim's situation. And coming home to an empty house is very difficult. Then I started printing these, and on the silk it was beautiful. And so that gave me respite. What I'm doing is creating media for myself. I don't know how it's going to be used, but as I work, it tells me. I could walk into the studio and begin. I didn't have to think about, now what am I going to do? You already have it. You know what you're going to do. And And it's okay. You can't change it. So you might as well wallow in beauty. Echoes, notes, letters, memories, the remembered sound of an old friend's words. In my mind, I grasped the poetry, inspired, relieved, rewritten, remembering laughter and tears.
I would say hold on tight because it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. Let it be hard, let it be really, really fucking hard, and let your friends and your family be there for you when you need to be a mess. That practice of openness opens the door for other people who may have had similar experiences to reach in.
We never get a second chance, just another opportunity. That's just the way life is. What I know for certain is that you would want me to be happy, and I am. One way or another, you taught me this. We are stronger where we are broken.
More than ashes, a sweet inspiration on living a life. I watch the hills eating the clouds today, disappearing, taking new forms, leaving white vapors on a blue sky. I hear you say, float, travel lightly. Remember me.
Θέλετε κάτι?
Βρήκα μια τσάντα στα σκουπίδια.
Να σου πω, έχουμε πελάτες τώρα. Έλα, πήγαινε.
Γεια σας. Να ρωτήσω κάτι.
Τι θα θέλατε?
Ξέρετε, βρήκα αυτή τη τσάντα και θέλω να την επιστρέψω. Είχε μέσα αυτό το μυθιστόρημα. Το διάβασα. Πολύ ωραία ιστορία. Αλλά δεν γράφει το συγγραφέα.
Μισό λεπτό. Δεν βρίσκω κάτι. Λυπάμαι.
Ευχαριστώ. Μπορώ να ψάξω αλλού.
Τι να σας πω, ρωτήστε σε άλλους εκδοτικούς οίκους.
Ευχαριστώ.
Σ' αγαπάω.
Κι εγώ.
Δυστυχώς, δεν το βρήκαμε.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Όνομα?
Νίκος.
Ορίστε, Νίκο.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Είσαι καλά.
Γεια σας.
Γεια σου. Α, το πρώτο μου. Σου άρεσε?
Είναι το αγαπημένο μου.
Αλήθεια?
Ναι.
Πώς σε λένε?
Μαρία. Ξέρετε, μου αρέσει πολύ το γραψιμό σας. Μου θυμίζει ένα αγαπημένο μου πρόσωπο.
Γράφει.
Έγραφε.
Έχει εκδώσει κάτι?
Δεν πρόλαβε. Σκοτώθηκε πριν μερικά χρόνια σε ένα δυστύχημα.
Σκοτώθηκε. Πολύ κρίμα. Έχεις κάτι δικό του?
Μόνο ένα ποίημα. Το είχε γράψει για μένα. Το έχω πάντα μαζί μου. Θέλετε να το διαβάσετε?
Θα το ήθελα πάρα πολύ.
C'è una rondine e un campanile, un soldato senza fucile, il ritorno dal Medio Oriente dove non ha concluso niente. C'è una strada su una collina e una sposa nella campagna, col sorriso che sa di Natale, e c'è un circo sulla statale e un bambino che corre. Semplicemente arriva qualcosa che prima non c'era. Come una guerra torna la primavera. Due ragazzi su una panchina mattoni di una provincia costruiscono un'altra vita. C'è tuo figlio che sta correndo come un dito sul mappamondo, in un cortile di sogni belli sotto una pioggia senza gli ombrelli. C'è uno spunto di luna, semplicemente arriva qualcosa che prima non c'era. La primavera, c'è qualcosa di te, c'è qualcosa di te, c'è qualcosa di me, c'è qualcosa di me.
Non basterà guardare lontano se oggi non vedi, non basterà domani come non è servito ieri. Se ora non credi, non basterà trovare il momento preciso. Quel che lasci andare in terra non è perso nel minuto esatto in cui è caduto. Non basterà. Sapere che gli alberi fanno radici come il vento e le ali, ma non per questo amici.
2419400 2419400 2419400 31 2419400. Paris Opera, where one comes to admire the highest expression of ballet and opera. In the 19th century, it is the center of cultural life. But for the painter Edgar Degas, the Opera House is much more than a place of entertainment. It's a world in miniature, offering every subject. Everything is represented there. Everything happens there. In this social and cultural melting pot, this atypical and paradoxical impressionist would become, for everyone, the painter of dancers.
They call me the painter of dancing girls. They don't see that, to me, the dancer was a pretext.
For more than 50 years, Degas tirelessly represents the opera in all its forms. His paintings bulldoze convention and revitalize pictorial representation. All of the power of his work takes its source here. Gradually, the opera becomes the laboratory for all his experiments, the heart of his creation. Paris, 1868. The Palais Garnier has been under construction for almost 10 years. Some 500 yards away, Paris high society gathers at the Opera House, Salle Le Pelletier. It's a time when going out to listen to music is much in vogue. The beating heart of Second Empire society, the Opera House is valued as much for its social gatherings as its music. Aristocrats, the bourgeoisie, industrialists, and politicians gather here to make and unmake deals and careers. Since childhood, Edgar Degas has been a regular attendee with his father, a banker and lover of the arts, who soon passes on his passion for music and supports him in his wish to be a painter. But at 34, Degas is still seeking his style. Academic art holds sway. He tries to take up approved subjects. He enjoys history painting, mythology, family portraiture. But he's not at home with the rigid conventions, seeking for a long time, but producing little.
Doubt and uncertainty are so annoying. Painting isn't that hard when you don't know how, but when you do, it's something else again.
That year, the official salon accepts Degas for the 4th time. He's still hoping to be recognized. The salon is the only way to be exhibited and pursue an artistic career. Degas has no choice. To stand out, he needs to make a strong impression. For the first time, he sees opera as a painter. He decides to tackle the portrait of an icon of the era, star dancer Eugénie Fiocre, one of the best-known ballerinas of the Second Empire. He admired her in the ballet La Source, which has been a triumph for months and which he saw several times. For those expecting the portrait of a diva, the result is confusing. Degas proposes an innovative painting whose title itself intrigues, Portrait of Eugénie Fiocre, apropos the ballet La Source. It is a strange canvas which combines several styles: history painting, portraiture, Orientalist painting. A singular point of view of which he is proud.
A painting is first of all the product of the artist's imagination. It mustn't be a copy.
Degas does not copy. He offers his own vision. But once again, his picture passes largely unnoticed. With one exception. Émile Zola, then an art critic, writes, "The horse's coat is magnificent, and the women's outfits treated with great delicacy. There are exquisite reflections in the river. While gazing at this painting, which lacks real substance but has strange elements, I thought of Japanese engravings, so artistic in the simplicity of their tones." This first opera painting does not bring the expected success. But dance shoes timidly announce their appearance. He doesn't yet know it, but with this painting, he has just launched a theme that will keep him busy his entire life. Despite the failure, Degas perseveres and follows his father's advice. Calm your mind and quietly and steadily plough the furrow you have begun. It is yours. Do not be discouraged. So he works day after day and continues to explore portraiture methodically, one of his main areas of research at the time. He paints family and friends. Many are musicians that he sees every week at his father's musical soirees. One of them, Désiré Diot, orders a portrait from him, his first commission. Diot is a bassoonist in the opera orchestra. Degas, who for several years now has sought to paint his models at work, dives into the world of the orchestra to observe it from close quarters.
We must paint portraits of people in familiar, typical attitudes, and above all, give their faces the same choice of expression that we give to their bodies.
And again, amazement ensues. Désiré Diot is there, in the center of the canvas, but he's not alone. He is captured in mid-concert, in a world that's realistic yet totally reconstructed. Degas reconstructs the orchestra to his taste, inviting friends he has already painted. He even has the audacity to cut off the heads of the dancers, who are not yet at the center of his concerns. The framing is bold and emphasizes what he decides to leave out of shot. For a portrait, it's groundbreakingly modern, light years away from the conventions imposed by the official salons. By asserting his point of view, Degas declares the novelty of his style and his interest in the artificial. At 36, Edgar Degas is an artist in the process of revealing himself, thanks to music. His audacity has got him this far. From now on, it will be his modus operandi. Avid opera goer, another subject soon catches his eye: ballet dancers. These twirling butterflies on stage are part of the attraction of opera in the 19th century. For Paris, this is the golden age of French grand opera. The productions are gigantic, with striking stage design, sumptuous sets, flamboyant costumes, and hundreds of performers on stage. the Opera House is the most popular venue in the capital. Coming here is a celebration, a dazzling experience, and opera lover Napoleon III is making this institution a showcase of his power. Degas adores these grand operas, particularly Robert le Diable by Meyerbeer, which he sees time and time again. He appreciates the virtuosity of an overture, of an aria, of a recitative. These are scenes he paints many times. He has seen so many. But painting from the opera-goer's point of view isn't enough. He wants to go further, to peek through the keyhole. His childhood friend Ludovic Halévy, librettist of Bizet's famous Carmen, first takes him backstage at the Opera House. Strictly off-limits to the paying public.
Je vous propose aujourd'hui de faire un filage, bien ou mal, parce que ce qui est fatigant à l'heure d'aujourd'hui, c'est de recommencer, de recommencer, de recommencer, de recommencer. D'accord ? Allez, chut, 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 on se concentre, on respire, on danse, on est des ballerines. On y va.
A veil rises on an unknown world, a dramatic turnaround. On the other side of the mirror, Degas discovers what he'd never seen before, and may have been looking for without knowing it.
There is a way of making light, beauty, feeling, line and color with a lot of love for what one does, with a desire to learn and a deep conviction of the excellence of painting.
The Opera House is a world of work, know-how, learning, gestures, movements, but also of colors, lights, fabrics. An unending range of subjects is offered to Degas. He gives up on historical subjects once and for all to capture the reality of his time.
Vous m'avez entendu dire respirez, respirez. C'est-à-dire que mettez la tête qui part un peu en arrière et les bras qui descendent doux, doux, joliment féminine. Vous êtes des femmes aussi. Vous arrêtez pas là. Là. Et pensez que quand vous êtes là, c'est comme un roseau pour moi. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a un petit peu de vent, les unes vers les autres.
He shows what had never been seen in painting, backstage at Salle Le Pelletier. The dance class is the first of his paintings on the theme of dances during exercise. Paintings with unusual compositions. Subjects rarely in the center, sometimes from behind or half out of frame. Floors take on considerable importance. The key support for dance, they live fully in Degas' paintings. Opera has now become his muse. He makes of it a toolbox from which he draws all the subjects, the motifs, the inspiration he needs to nourish daily the work that he would never abandon.
All I want is a little corner of the world and to explore it properly. Art does not expand, it distills. And if you need comparisons at all costs, I'd say that to produce good fruit, you must be like an espaliered tree. You stand there your whole life long, arms outstretched like branches, mouth open to take in what's happening, what's around you, and draw life from that. We only love and give of art that which we're used to giving.
His paintings find admirers, and he begins to sell, though he always finds it hard to surrender his canvases. It's research that drives him. He is no longer interested in glory. After difficult years, he can finally begin to live from his art, a privilege that few of his generation enjoy. But after one particular night, nothing would ever be the same. One evening in October, there's a knock at the door of the concierge's office of the Salle Le Pelletier. Flames are emerging from the building. Half an hour later, the fire seems to be under control. The concierge assures them the danger is past. But at midnight, the fire takes hold anew and ravages the theatre. By 1 o'clock, the whole roof is ablaze, and the venue's gigantic chandelier gives way. All night, despite the firefighters' best efforts, the fire spreads, destroying the building and all the treasures it contains. By the early morning, everything is destroyed. Nothing is left of the opera house. Nothing of the grand opera sets and costumes. For Parisian society, this is a tragedy. But for Degas, it's far worse. He's losing the place of his youth, of his revelation. His own room, as Mallarmé called it.
Lack of opera is true suffering.
The ritual attendance at the opera screeches to a painful halt, but not his work. Degas continues to work in his studio as he has always done, thanks to his many sketches and notebooks.
Where the arcades recede, the moonlight barely touches
He has
the columns.
developed a phenomenal visual memory. He is capable of reproducing in detail a fabric, a light, a colour. He doesn't paint on plein air. He never erected his easel at the opera house. He works only in his studio, his place of creation. The dances appear to him as flashes of memory. Rue de Laval, Rue Blanche, then Rue Fontaine. His studios are always located near the opera house. It's in these places, of which no trace remains today, that he spends the vast majority of his life and produces his paintings, always starting with the drawing. Because he's classically trained. In his youth, he studied the great masters for 3 years in Italy, and then as a copyist at the Louvre. He met Ingres, who would remain his major influence. Degas would remember his whole life long the advice he had given him. Draw lines, lots of lines, either from memory or from nature. Drawing would always be the basis of his work. In his self-portrait as a young artist, he in fact painted himself as a draftsman, a charcoal holder in hand, not as a painter. Even though he works according to traditional methods, Degas seeks to open a new path. He no longer wants to submit to academic judgment, no longer puts forward paintings for the official salons. And he's not the only one. Every day for several years, he has been going to the Gerbois Café, then to the Nouvelle Athènes near Place Pigalle. There he meets Manet, Monet, Cézanne, Berthe Morisot, Sisley, a whole generation of painters struggling to remake the world of painting. April the 15th, 1874, the first independent exhibition of this group, later to be known as the Impressionists, is hosted by the photographer Nadar. Degas, a sign of his radicalism, wanted to name them the Intransigents. He gets particularly involved in the organization of this exhibition and presents several of his opera works. These artists are aware of their actions. They have just laid the foundations for a revolution in the world of art. The assertive presence of touch, the sometimes unfinished appearance of the paintings, help to convey the visual emotions dear to these painters who seek to represent reality. They favor the living environment of their contemporaries, modernity, the flow of their time, rather than history or myth. They invent this new painting at a time when everything is being transformed and modernized. Industry is growing apace, with engines replacing horses. Paris is being transformed by Baron Haussmann and his Grand Boulevard. A stone's throw from this first exhibition, a mammoth project is on the point of completion in Degas' neighborhood. Years of intense labor, hundreds of workers, the demolition of a good part of the neighborhood to open what would become the Avenue de l'Opéra. The long-awaited new opera house is finally ready. It is a veritable palace with colored marble, Venetian mosaics, gilding. This new setting for the operatic arts, expertly designed by Charles Garnier, is inaugurated on January the 5th, 1875, in one of the most luxurious festivals Paris has known. Degas, who couldn't wait for its arrival, is scathing about this new opera house. Too big, too pretentious. It lacks the charm of the one he discovered with his father. A sentimental attachment to Le Pelletier, given added poignancy by the death of his beloved father a year earlier.
It seems to me that nowadays, if you want to seriously make art and make a nice place for yourself, you need to be steeped in solitude. There's too much gossip.
Degas is not a socialite. Yet the operatic arts are still the same. The sets are reconstructed, the costumes recreated, and grand opera in the French style is celebrated. The artifice of the shows feeds his imagination. Pastel is his favorite medium, although seen as not very noble. In appearance fragile and unstable as the dust of butterfly wings, it wonderfully translates the artificial, the evanescence of theatre stages, and that alive, natural effect of his paintings. A sensation strengthened by singular points of view, dancers balancing, bird's-eye views, snapshots from balconies. His framing is always surprisingly modern. He will cheerfully crop arms, legs, or heads to energize his composition. The Opera House remains his laboratory. In this temple of dance, the lessons, the rehearsals, the effort to condition the body so that it becomes an instrument in the service of an art, offer him an all-round vision for the study of bodies.
Maintenant sur demi-pointe. 1 et 2. Les orteils. 1. 2 ports de bras, couronne. 1. 1 et 2. 1 et 2. 1. 2 bien.
One question is central to this obsession: how to represent movement, how to bring a painting to life. Movement becomes his passion, and dance the tool that enables him to study it.
Allez, étire le corps, grandis-toi, monte, 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 voilà.
He analyzes gestures as if relying on the optical phenomenon of the persistence of vision to record increments of movement.
You have to redo the same subject 10 times, 100 times. Nothing in art must seem to be an accident, not even movement.
A man of his time, Edgar Degas takes a particular interest in science in a century when movement and its analysis are major concerns. Muybridge and his photographic studies show for the first time real frozen images of a movement in action. For science and art alike, these images revolutionized the representation of the world, opening up new perspectives. They support Degas in his research to represent scenes that seem taken from real life. To Gauguin, Degas' ballerinas are not women. They are machines in motion with graceful and prodigiously well-balanced lines. Representing movement is not Degas' only quest. He examines reality in all its dimensions, the better to reconstruct it and make it all the more real. By defending realism, he brings about the same revolution in painting as the Concorso and Zola do for the novel with naturalism. His modernity lies also in his intense way of looking, to the point of prying, at the human body in its rawest form, like an entomologist. Without judgment, he observes the most spontaneous, natural, innocuous gestures. He captures moments of rest, when concentration drops and the body relaxes. When the dancers stretch and recover after practicing and performing. The dancing girls are not prisoners of a sublimated vision, but appear as they really are, in their everyday nature, their ordinariness. He turns the same eye on milliners and laundresses, unfashionable occupations never represented, subjects deemed unworthy of classical painting. Yet these paintings leave their mark. Zola, speaking of his novel The Drinking Den and of his heroine Gervaise, also a laundress, admits his debt to Degas. I quite simply described, at more than one point in my pages, several of your paintings. The naturalism of the poses is actually the result of years of studying the old masters, those of the Renaissance in particular, including Montaigne, of whom he is fond. As a young man, he copied the crucifixion at the Louvre. What stays with him are lines, shape, and bearing, which he takes and transforms for the rest of his life in the poses of dancers. In his paintings at the opera, Degas, contradictory as ever, reconciles his dreams of history painting and his intention to be the painter of his time, resolutely modern.
No art was ever less spontaneous than mine. What I do is the result of reflection and study of the great masters. Of inspiration, spontaneity, temperament, I know nothing.
Degas does not paint what he sees, but totally reconstructs his canvases. He brings a model, often a dancer, to the studio and asks her to assume various poses that he draws and then recasts as several characters, seeking the composition that suits him best. everything is recomposed, recreated. The images and sensations captured at the opera here give birth to original works, far from real life.
You know what I think of painters who work on the highways? Let's say that if I were the government, I'd have a brigade of gendarmes watching people who paint landscapes in the wild. I don't want anyone to die, but I wouldn't mind them starting by shooting small game.
While water lilies, poppies, and the outdoor life prosper in the paintings of his Impressionist friends, Degas, almost his whole life long, has painted enclosed places far from nature. The opera house, realm of theatricality and phantasmagoria, shapes his art. Artificial lighting offers expressive possibilities that he likes to bring to life in his paintings. On stage, the lighting comes from footlights, in other words, from the floor, translated by deft, light touches, here too, often using pastel. In this home of the performing arts, Degas finds all the subjects he needs, and even a way to paint the world at large without traveling. Thanks to the scenery, he can also paint landscapes from every latitude. This sedentary lifestyle pushes him to constantly experiment.
To the Impressionists, natural life is necessary. For me, artificial life.
Too independent and lonely to blend in fully with the movement, he nevertheless remains an Impressionist. He shares the rejection of convention, the desire for contemporary painting, and the conviction that there is no subject too minor to paint. And where does he find his new realistic subjects but at the opera? Behind the society parties and the magical shows, Degas reflects another, harsher reality. Opera house subscribers usually had their dancers. These high society gentlemen, privileged and unquestionably wealthy, are the only ones permitted to pass the connecting door and thus gain access backstage and to the famous foyer de la danse during or after the show. Built to the rear of the stage, this foyer wasn't just designed for dance. It is also the setting for meetings away from public scrutiny. The dancers, who do their stretching and warm-ups here, are offered up to the men, who practically come to purchase them. A practice enabled by the age of consent at the time, set at only 13. It's a time when dance is rarely a vocation. Girls from poor families are placed here in childhood by self-interested parents trying to escape poverty and earn a living. And more. To succeed, they must find a protector. It's an ordinary reality that Degas regularly shows in his paintings. Men in stern black suits who prowl the stage, behind the uprights, in the dressing rooms, in the corridors. He explores the subject extensively, with 78 drawings and monotypes inspired by short stories written by his friend Ludovic Halévy. The Cardinal family relates the adventures of two young dancers at the opera house and their self-serving parents. A series of short stories that is a big hit at the time. You know, Pauline's becoming very fair. Yes, she'll be like Virginie. An ugly duckling till 13, Virginie then suddenly blossomed. And blossomed prettily. She's now the most beautiful girl in the opera. He chooses to make these illustrations in monotype, a technique he claims to be the inventor of. The artist creates a composition in ink on a metal plate, then runs it through a press. He can only obtain one copy, sometimes two. From time to time, he brightens up his monotypes with gouache or pastel, the black enhancing the colors and casting powerful contrasts. Like this place, where the magical rubs shoulders with the vulgar on a daily basis. It's a technique conducive to subjects considered risque at the time, one he will use to paint brothels. The raw reality allows him to explore the representation of naked bodies and commodified human relationships. Degas rarely shows these images. He senses that they wouldn't be understood. He never left the neighborhood in which he grew up with his family, a stone's throw from Place Pigalle and the opera. After the death of his father, his two brothers went bankrupt. As eldest of the family, he makes it his duty to pay their debts. He must paint. He often makes little works to sell. He calls them articles, done in pastel to save time, such as fans. Opera-themed ones sell best, so he produces one after another. But it's a chore that weighs on Degas.
No time to do any really serious experiments. Always articles to fabricate. How long it takes, and how my last good years are disappearing into mediocrity.
However, his standards have not slipped one bit, and his need for innovation is still keen. He wants to go further, to venture into terra incognita, as he calls it. At 45, he begins one of the boldest projects of his life. Among the young dancers, he picks one to be his model. Her name is Marie von Goerten. Degas records her address in his notebook. She lives close to his home. Her mother, a laundress, prostitutes herself to alleviate the extreme poverty and places her girls at the opera house that they might avoid the same fate. To supplement her salary, Marie regularly poses in Degas' studio. This new work occupies all of the artist's thoughts. Sure of himself, he announces it for the 5th Impressionist exhibition. A glass case is installed to receive it. In vain. And the vitrine is still there at the 6th exhibition. Degas, never satisfied, is working until the last moment. The public is getting impatient. The work does not arrive until 3 days after the opening, and it comes as a shock. The little dancer, aged 14 years, is the first sculpture Degas has ever presented. But it is such a radical break with everything that is being done at the time. He chose wax, a material not seen as noble. And to compound the irreverence, he dressed her in a real tutu and dance shoes with a bow in her hair. Groundbreaking. To a public used to sculptures in marble of goddesses or ancient figures, this little dancer is not a work of art, it is blasphemy. There's an outcry. Why is she so ugly? The opera rat, with its base nature, bad instincts, and vicious leanings. A little girl perverting the social order. The work, however, contains everything he has always sought at the opera: realism, novelty, movement, a most accurate representation of the body. But Degas laughs at success and despises those who seek fame.
There's a kind of shame in being known, especially by people who don't understand you. A great reputation is therefore a kind of shame.
Degas is misunderstood. Never again will he exhibit a sculpture. The rejection of The Little Dancer does not distract him from opera. He keeps coming back, more often than ever. This is where Degas recharges his batteries with music, where he reflects on his painting and renews its forms. Around this time, he acquires the status of an opera subscriber, so difficult to obtain and so long hoped for. His love of music is fulfilled. Over 7 years, he attends 177 performances. He has a preference for certain operas, such as Rea's Ségur, which he sees no fewer than 37 times. As is the custom in this small world, he often arrives late, coming to see a specific moment in the opera. In particular, the appearances of Rose Caron, famous singer and companion of Clemenceau, whom he did not miss for any reason. She inspires a portrait, and for her, he even becomes a poet.
These long, noble arms, slow to fury, slow to humane yet cruel tenderness, arrows loosed by the soul of a goddess, may yet fall to ground as if miscued. All this beauty will follow me a measure. Should my eyes fail, let my hearing prevail. From the sound, I shall see her gesture.
If he is sensitive to singers and dancers alike, it is because of the emotion they bring him, emotion that nourishes his art, not for romantic or carnal relationships. Degas' private life remains a mystery. We know of no affairs, no relationships. These evenings when music moves him, when dance charms him, when he meets his friends, the emptiness weighs on him less. Degas chose to devote all his time, his whole life, to his art. Opera is still the main subject of his creations. His subscriber status allows him to take new liberties. He continues to innovate, with formats in unusual, extended dimensions. Even before the arrival of the cinema, his vision is already cinematographic. Always ahead of his time, he makes viewers sit up and take notice. The dancer is indeed a pretext to keep on searching.
They call me the painter of dancing girls. They don't see that the dancer was just a pretext for me to paint pretty fabrics and render movement.
Degas will, however, break free from this beloved place. The repertoire is changing. French grand opera is passé, and tastes have shifted to embrace Wagner, whom he does not appreciate. In September 1892, aged 58, he crosses the threshold of the opera house for the very last time. He would return no more to the place that he has visited so often.
We are still here in the studio. Without work, what a sad old age. You must have a high idea, not of what you do, but of what you could do one day. Otherwise, there's no point in working.
He keeps working, searching, innovating. Always on the lookout for new things, he develops a passion for photography. He approaches it as he does painting, attentive to the light, the composition, the poses, the scenery, and the framing, putting great effort into the staging. A new art which he experiments with to capture body movements. He no longer goes to the opera, but brings the opera to him. And once again, dancers reveal themselves on his paintings, more alive than ever. With every day, the threat of blindness grows. He no longer reads, nor writes. His vision is growing darker. Real suffering, coupled with the fear of going blind.
I can scarcely see with these wretched eyes that soon will desert me. So now I look with my fingers. I work with the greatest pain, and it is my only joy.
Wax sculpture is now often the only way to define lines, which he then transfers to paper. To spare his eyes and save time, he uses tracing paper. He can thus multiply isolated drawings to produce variants from one picture to the next. Despite the difficulties, nothing seems to stop him. He breaks free from reality and achieves total freedom. He moves forward constantly, says an amazed Pissarro. The drawings are simplified. The thick lines of the charcoal no longer venture into detail, but draw dynamic shapes, volumes, movements freed from their context. His paintings become orgies of color, as Degas himself puts it. For Renoir, if Degas had died at 50, he'd have the reputation of an excellent painter. After 50, he became a master. Degas deliberately turns his back on the realism towards which he had striven, and now opens the way to modern art, heralding works from Picasso and Braque, who will find inspiration here. Day after day, year after year, Degas has honed his work like an alchemist. The Opera House was his place of research and of fulfillment, a mirror of himself. Like the dancers he loved to paint so much, he worked tirelessly, repeating his actions countless times to create the sense of ease, of naturalness, and to restore life itself. Through the artifice of art, Degas reveals a more complete, more intense reality.
One sees as one wants to see. It's false. And that falsity constitutes art.
stai dando?
Te lo sto dando.
1-0, È supplementari 1-0. Abbiamo appena cominciato i supplementari.